Hi everyone, the next patch is a flap with a hidden cat underneath the flap. I've cut a rectangle of fabric and we're going to just sew that into the flap like so, but I'm going to take a 10 centimetre piece of elastic. This is mask elastic, so it's nice and soft and easy to stretch, and we're going to pop that in the bottom of the fabric about quarter of the way across, so halfway when we actually close it up, so it'll be in the center there. And that little flap, that little loop is going to hold the flap down, and we're going to actually sew a button on later so that it will be a button flap, or should I say loop. Okay, so now what we need to do is to just stitch around to make this into the flap. I'm just doing this, of course, with a straight stitch again. You're going to want to push the, turn this through or bag it out, so we won't go to the end. We're going to leave a nice hole so we have room to turn it through the other way. And what you want to do before you turn it through is to just trim off those corners so that there's not too much fabric at the corner and it sits much more evenly. I'm just going to push those corners out nice and square, and also this corner here. And I'm just going to turn this part, that we haven't sewn, I'm going to turn that under so that it is also nice and neat and tidy, just like that. Now I would normally just give that a quick press, but because we're doing this as a tutorial, I don't want to leave the machine. So I'm just going to put a couple of little pins in there just to hold that hole closed, and that flap will be sewn on in just a moment. Now I'm going to take the cat, and I think that all of the kits have a little cat like this in them, so we're just going to take the pussycat and I'm going to put it just down here. You can put it wherever you like on your mat. It's just a matter of trying to find where there's space for it. So we're going to put it in here like this. Going to put some pins on here. Again, if you do have some bonder web, you could use that to secure your pussycat in place before you stitch it on, but it's not mandatory or anything like that. So we've got our pussycat in place, so we're going to sew it on. I noticed that these pieces of fabric have actually been cut out using pinking shears, so I don't think we have to be too fussy about the stitch that we're going to use to secure it. So instead of doing a satin stitch, although you can do a satin stitch if you would like, I'm just going to do an ordinary zigzag just to secure it in place. And I'm using white thread on here. Just move it around if you need to, going around the corners. Okay, there's our little pussycat in place, looking very cute. And then we're just going to take our flap and we're going to place the flap over the top of the pussycat and just pin it in place like this. Okay, just to hide the pussycat. Then we're just going to stitch that in place. Again, just using straight stitch. But the first row of stitching you need to do quite close to the top here. Oops, daisy. Better put it back onto straight stitch here. Okay, so just fairly close to the edge so that we make sure that we close up that gap at the top where we didn't quite sew right to the end, the bit that we, in essence, bagged the fabric through. Okay, so we've just got a nice row of stitching there. You can, if you want to, pop another row of stitching. I wouldn't put it too far apart because otherwise you'll start covering over the cat's face. But another row if you want to put it in there. Just like that. And you can, if you want to, top stitch all the way around this flap as well. So now that we have our little flap, we then have our little pussycat underneath, which is rather cute, and then you would just pop a button on here, just sew it onto the fabric. You might like to put a little bit of